All right, we're going to talk about two different things today. We're going to talk about decimal operations, adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing decimals. And we're going to talk about solving equations that have decimals in them. Okay, so first of all, let's remind ourselves just of a couple of key things. First of all is adding and subtracting decimals. Okay. Remember, when you add or subtract decimals, you must align the decimals in each number. Okay, so for example, if I have negative 1.25 plus 14.4, I have negative 1.5 plus 14.4. Okay, if I have that, all the rules still apply that would apply normally to negatives and positives. Okay, you have a negative and a positive, you subtract their absolute values, all of that. Okay, so not only do you have to deal with, yes, I have to line the decimals up, but then I also have to take and follow my rules for negatives and positives. So as we look at this one, we have a negative and a positive, and we're adding. Okay, so that means we have to take the absolute value of these two numbers. Okay, the absolute value of those two numbers. The absolute value of 14.4 is 14.4. The absolute value of negative 1.25 is 1.25. And we're going to line up the decimals. And we're going to subtract. We're subtracting absolute values. Okay? So 14.4 minus 1.25. Well, I need to add a 0 here at the end before I start subtracting. Can I do 0 minus 5? No, can't do that. Have to make that a 3, make that a 10. So that becomes 5, 3, no, 1. Bring down the decimal, 13. So 13.15. Now, the larger absolute value is positive, so it's a positive 13.15. Okay, now let's look at a subtraction one. Let's look at this one here, negative 0.62 minus negative 0.741. Okay, well first we have to follow our rules, which says change that to addition, do the opposite of that number. The opposite of that number is 0.741, positive, because it was a negative there. Okay. Then next we have a negative and a positive, so we got to take the absolute value of those two numbers. Okay, and we have to line up their decimals, and that gives me 0.741 and 0.62, and I'm subtracting their absolute values. Okay, I'm going to add a 0 right here with the 6.2 to make it have the same amount of digits as the top number. Now we subtract those. 1 minus 0 is 1. 4 minus 2 is 2. 7 minus 6 is 1. Bring down the decimal. So I have 0.121. And the larger absolute value is positive. So it's positive 0.121. Okay. I want you to try this one on your own. Negative 3.72 minus 4.58. Negative 3.72 minus 4.58. Huh? What? Oh, okay. Copeland, what'd you get? Point what? No. No. Haley? 8.30. That is not correct. Anthony? No. Haley Shields? No. Gracie? Yes. Negative 8.3. No. You are confusing rules again. So this is negative 3.72. I reversed them. Dyslexic there. Change that to addition. Do the opposite of positive, which is negative 4.58. So I have two negatives, so we just add the two numbers together. Because of the two negative signs, we just add the two numbers together. That's 0, carry my 1. That would be 13, carry my 1. And that would be 8. Bring down the decimal. So I have 8.30, and I keep the negative sign. Now, that 0 does not matter. So negative 8.3 would really, you need to get in the habit of doing that. Madison? No. Yesterday, if we said anything about a rule, we may have said that two negatives multiplied together equal a positive. I'm not multiplying, I'm adding. It's a totally different rule for addition than it is for multiplication. Remember, multiplication and division, two negatives make a positive. Multiplication and division. Adding or subtracting, really adding, because there's not any rules for subtracting, it's just adding, because we change all subtraction to addition. The rules for adding two negatives is you add it up and then you just keep the negative sign. That'd be like saying I took $10 from you today and I took $20 from you tomorrow, and you're going to feel happy and positive about that. You're not going to feel happy and positive about that. Okay? If you are, bring it and I'll take it, and you can feel positive about yourself. All right? So, now let's look at a multiplication one with multiplication and division. So we have negative 4.8 times 0.1. Okay? When you're multiplying decimals, you do not have to align the decimals. Okay? You just take negative 4.8 times 0.1. Now, in this case, the decimals lined up just simply because the numbers happen to match up. Okay? But now you just take and multiply. 1 times 8 is 8. 1 times 4 is 4. No. Now you have one decimal place for two decimal places. And so I go once, twice. So 0.48, and it's negative because there's one negative sign. Okay? If it was this, negative 4.8 times negative 0.1, rewrite that. Like that, then that's the same thing except it's a positive 0.48. The reason that one's positive is because here we have two negative signs. Okay? You okay? Sure? Yeah. All right. Let's look at division. Let's do one more of the multiplying decimals. Let's go 2.03 times negative 1.66. Okay, we just multiply that together, just like we would any normal decimals. Okay, the negative sign will come into play at the very end. So you just take 6 times 3 is 8, carry my 1, so that'd be 18. 6 times 2 is 12. 0. 8, 1, 2, 1. 2 zeros. 3, 0, 2. 8, 9, 6, 3, 3. So 3, 3, 6, 9, 8. And there is 2 decimal places there, 2 decimal places there, for a total of 4 decimal places. So here's your decimal. You move it 4 places. Once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. Because there's 4 of them there. You have 1, 2, 3, 4 decimal places. So I go once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. So that gives me an answer of 3.3698. I have one negative sign, so it's negative 3.3698. Okay. Any questions over that? Haley? Any questions? Sure. Looks like you have a question. Oh, yeah. All right. Now, understand that if this would have been this problem, like that, the only thing that changes it just moves the decimal one more place, and that would be 0.33698. Okay? That would be the only difference. The multiplying of it and all that would still be the same. Okay? All right, let's talk about division. Negative 0.63 divided by 0.7. Now remember, it is dividend divided by divisor. Okay, and that means then as you look at your bracket, divisor, dividend. Okay, so as we look at our bracket here, that's 0.7 and negative 0.63. Now, here's your problem. Your divisor cannot have a decimal in the number. Okay, so this right here I can't have. Okay, your divisor cannot have a decimal in the number. So what I have to do is this. I have to take that decimal and move it one place to the right. So I got to do the same thing on the inside. One place to the right. So I have 7 into negative 6.3. Okay, now that we've done that, don't worry about the decimal. Does 7 go into 6? No. Does 7 go into 63? Okay, so 7 goes into 63, so I bring up my decimal just right up on top on the bracket. What is 7 into 63? How many times? What? 9 times. 9 times 7 is 63. Remainder 0. So that's negative 0.9. All right. Now we need to translate this into what we're actually doing. Okay? This was just a little review to what we're actually doing today with this information. Okay? You will have some of this in your work that you're going to do. But the main purpose, the main goal today is to solve equations with decimals. Okay? So, for example, x plus 8.5 equal 13.7. Okay? Now, same thing we did the other day. Okay? You're doing the inverse operation of whatever you're doing to x. Okay, here we're adding 8.5 to x. Okay? So we are adding 8.5 to the variable x. So to solve, we must do the inverse operation, which is subtracting 8.5 from both sides of the equation. Okay, so here's what we must do. Subtract 8.5, subtract 8.5. Over on this side, it cancels out, leaving me with x is equal to 13.7 minus 8.5. Okay, can I do 13.7 minus 8.5? Yes, has no negatives. The second number is not larger than the first number. So I just take and line the decimals up and subtract. 7 minus 5 is 2. Bring down my decimal. 13 minus 8, 5. X is equal to 5.2. Now I want to show you one that is a little bit different because of the numbers they give you. Okay, it's the same process. A plus 4.8 equals 2.29. Are there any negatives involved? No. Not yet. Okay. Let me ask you this. Okay, everybody look at the screen. Okay, stop writing stuff down and look at the screen. Can I add a positive number to a positive 4.8 and get a smaller 2.29? No. Okay, even if I think of the smallest number I could think of. Okay, let's say I'm not real bright and the smallest number I can think of is 1. Okay, well, what's 1 plus 4.8? 5.8. That's a lot larger than 2.29. Okay, well, it's 0. Okay, well, 0 plus 4.8 is 4.8. It's still larger. So that tells me that my answer is going to have to be negative. Okay? Now, let's solve it. We solve it by doing the inverse, which is subtract 4.8 from both sides. Cancels over here, leaving me with A. A is equal to 2.29 minus 4.8. Well, now I'm your first grade math teacher. Now, little Haley, you can't do that because 4.8 is bigger than 2. So you can't subtract 4.8 from 2. You've written that wrong. Did you ever hear that, Haley? When you were in elementary school? Okay, everybody has. Yeah, everybody has. They say, well, you can't do that, blah, blah. Well, yeah, you can. You're just not smart enough to handle it yet. Huh? No. No. It is A equal 2.29 plus negative 4.8. Because we change subtraction to addition, and we do the opposite of the number behind it. Okay? Now, that means I have a negative and a positive. Okay? We just said up here, we just said right here, not there, not there, right there. We just had one similar to that right there. Okay? Another one right here. Okay? So we did the absolute value. So we got to go back down here, and we're going to do the absolute value of these two numbers and subtract them. The absolute value of negative 4.8 is 4.8. The absolute value of positive 2.29 is 2.29, and I'm going to subtract the absolute values. Okay? Now, I need to add a 0 right here. Okay, so they have the same amount of digits. So can I do 0 minus 9? No. So I have to borrow, make that a 7, make that a 10. 10 minus 9 is 1. 7 minus 2 is 5. 4 minus 2 is 4. Hey, you're actually awake. It's 2. Okay, now, it's 2.51. The larger absolute value is negative. So it is negative 2.51 because we also just discovered a while ago when we were talking that we couldn't add a positive to 4.8 and get a smaller number. Okay? And so if you look at this, what they've said is this. Okay, that's what they're saying. Okay, is that if I take a negative 2.51 and add it to 4.8, that's going to give me a positive 2.29. Okay, and if you check that, you should come up, it should come up to be this right here. Okay. All right. I want you to try this one on your own. Negative 0.504 plus h equal negative 0.18. Now, before we start, before you start, let's look at this number right here, 0.5 and 0.1. Now, they're negatives, right? Yeah. So going from 0.5, so if I look at a number line, here's 0 and here's negative 1. Well, negative 0.5 is right there. Negative 0.1 would be right there. There's 0. So the number got larger. Okay? So this number here got larger when I added something to it. So can I add a negative number to negative 0.5 and get larger? No, you can't do that. So that tells me that this answer is going to have to be positive. Okay, that's the only way that that can happen. So now go ahead and solve it. All right. So let's look at this one. Hey, quiet down. Well, sorry. Sit in your chair right and it doesn't. All right. Now, we've got to subtract. We've got to subtract because we're adding. We have to subtract 0.504 from both sides. Okay, it cancels over here, leaving us with h equals negative 0.18 minus minus, oh, that's a negative, my bad. That's subtracting a negative negative 0.504. Okay, so we're subtracting a negative 0.504. Now, here's what we must do. H equals negative 0.18. We must change that to addition. Do the opposite of negative 0.504, and that is positive 0.504. Okay? You're going to take the absolute value of those two and subtract them. Okay? We'll finish it up tomorrow. Okay? You may go.